Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2011 war tragedy titled Coriolanus. Now, Coriolanus runs for 2 hours and 3 minutes long. It is directed by Ralph Fiennes. It is produced by Ralph Fiennes, John Logan, Gabrielle Tana, Julia Taylor Stanley, and Colin Vaines. The script was written by John Logan, and it is based off of the Shakespearean play, one of the more obscure Shakespearean plays that was ever adapted to the screenplay. Of course, everybody knows Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, and definitely Much Ado About Nothing, The Taming of the Shrew. But Coriolanus is finally getting its exposure, and this is one of the more obscure William Shakespeare plays ever really covered here. So, are we expecting good things? Are we expecting bad things? We'll soon find out. The score was done by Ilan Eshkeri, the cinematography by Barry Ackroyd, and the editing was done by Nicholas Gaster. And the stars of the movie are Ralph Fiennes, Gerard Butler, Vanessa Redgrave, Brian Cox, Jessica Chastain, John Canny, James Nesbitt, Paul Jessen, Lubna Azabel, and Ashraf Barome. So Ralph Fiennes can fall into the similar pool of talented performers who can also have a knack at direction, just like Robert Redford, Mel Gibson, and Clint Eastwood. In his directorial debut, Coriolanus, Ralph Fiennes combines a Shakespeare film that anyone can grasp at, even if you don't have a degree in Shakespearean literature. In his 30-plus year career in films, Ralph Fiennes has built an impressive reputation of really getting emotionally deep into his characterizations and going out of way to make the complexities of his characters something to get his audience a reason to root for. His direction has similar traits to his performances. The film definitely explores the strengths and vulnerabilities of his characters, along with many triumphs and failures, while keeping his characters look and feel real. And this is about as real as it comes here. Ralph Fiennes really truly has this great knack of molding his characters. He actually isn't just, Ralph Fiennes playing a character. No, none of that bullshit. He actually is the character. And I've seen it many, many times in many of the movies that he has done in the past. He takes a character and he just lives it like he was that person. He really truly brings his characters to life, and here in Coriolanus is totally no exception. Fiennes stars here as Caius Marcius Coriolanus, a mighty but questionable general in the Roman army. During an altercation with a rival army brigade, he goes beyond protocol that causes his civil liberties to be in doubt. An activist elite wants Coriolanus evicted for his violations. For his heroic accomplishments, his support of Mother Volumnia, played by Vanessa Redgrave, suggests that he be ranked to the position of the high office of the council. But he must get support from the destitute, who are the ones most affected by his questionable deeds. Many people want him to reach out and restore peace, which also includes his wife Virgilia, played by Jessica Chastain, and his son as well. He agrees to try to get the support, but the activists just don't want any of that. Feeling rejected from those he stood up for, Coriolanus eventually joins forces with his enemy, Tullus Aufidius, played by Gerard Butler, and the consequences come into play once these two form an alliance. I mean, just think about it. I mean, this guy was a decorated hero in in the army. His own people, by right should label him as a hero, a martyr. But the thing of the matter is that his anger and his intensity seem to get the better of him. And so therefore the people, the civilians who he's supposed to stand by, he eventually releases his misanthropy, and sometimes even his anger can also be synonymous with arrogance. And so then he says something that ticks people off, which eventually everybody around him just starts to get pissed off about him. Nobody wants him around. He tries to go in public to try to state his address, but everybody knows that it's all just a bunch of hyperbole, and they've already made their decisions. They think he's a phony, they think he's a fraud, they think he's not doing it for the people and that he's just doing it for himself. So he felt like he was betrayed. He gets evicted from his people. So then he aligns himself with Aufidius, his enemy, and therefore he ends up going up against the people who he was originally rooting for. Now, it's a question in mind as to whether or not Coriolanus actually really truly deserves our sympathy or not. In many ways, he's kind of playing off a very, very real character here. Because you want to know something, even though the people who you may worship or the people you may look up to, sometimes they may not necessarily be the people who truly respect you back. They could truly be, some of the biggest assholes. And maybe they are doing it just for themselves, and they don't give a flying fuck about the people who they're supporting. When you think about it, it's all true. Everything about this movie is actually quite believable, and Coriolanus just kind of plays off that kind of character. And of course, we all know that the guy is trying to yearn for our sympathies eventually, but we all know that it's probably all just crocodile tears in the end. So that's why he aligns himself and decides to go against the people who betrayed him. And of course, this triggers off a series of events, and it had to take a lot of persuasion, especially from his mother. And oh, by God, Vanessa Redgrave just killed it here. Oh my goodness, if you really want to know who the real strongest performer in this movie is, although yes, Ralph Fiennes was very good in capturing the character in Coriolanus, just like who I would expect to see in this movie, it's actually Vanessa Redgrave who's the strongest character in there. I mean, she does everything she can in her powers to get her son to come back to the people who she supports, and to also put in, to try to get an understanding from the people what he meant, and that everything that he had said was misconstrued, and that he apologizes. If he can't get the apologies from the people that betrayed him, his mother will truly try to get them to reconsider their thoughts, and boy, does she does this effectively. I thought she was really, really, really well performed here. If you really want to tune into this movie, Vanessa Redgrave's movie, Vanessa Redgrave's performance is the most powerful here. I may now listen here. I may feel like a complete idiot, but I may as well make a confession to all of you. I have always had trouble deciphering Shakespeare. The language and the lingo was all so complex. Even simple tales like Romeo and Juliet are hard to fully translate. Yes, I know what the story is all about. Everybody knows about Romeo and Juliet and how these two lovebirds love each other, but they are kept apart because their families are bitter rivals. And since neither of them can have each other, in the end, everybody dies in this one. There is no happy ending. Yes, romance can come in comedies, but Romeo and Juliet is anything but a comedy. Coriolanus is anything but comical. It's a tragedy, it's a war. There's not a lot of war scenes. Remember, this is Shakespeare, so there's going to be a lot of dialogue. But the battle scenes are brutal, and the dialogue is just as effective. But I've always never was able to fully decipher Shakespeare because it's hard. It's definitely hard to translate. It doesn't matter whether you have a degree in English literature, it's always been the most difficult thing to fully reiterate because it's just so advanced and it's just so complex. But here, on the plus side, Coriolanus, this movie is actually quite easy to get invested in. Thanks to the brilliant script from John Logan, his technical skills make it easy to get under without necessarily insulting our intelligence. But still, he does everything in his power to make it easier to fully comprehend. Because when it comes to Shakespeare, it's more than the dialogue will not do justice, but the actions and the emotions will truly get you fueled up in its delivery and its pathos along the way. In various scenes, mock TV newscasts appear to gather updates during the course of the action. Yes, in this movie, even though this is a Shakespearean tale and the performers are speaking in Shakespearean lingo, one of the more clever things they did in this movie was to make everything seem modernized. It's set in Roman period. They're talking in Shakespearean lingo, but the settings is in the modern view. So we're going to have TV, we're going to have social media, we're going to have news outlets, and the characters are not dressed like Shakespeare or Renaissance period. These people are going to be dressed in military, modernized war regalia. But the only thing that's Shakespeare is the language. That's the only thing Shakespeare. Everything else is set in modern periods. Now, people might say that, if I was to walk down the street and I was speaking in Shakespearean lingo, people will think I'm a nutcase. People already think I'm some sort of a nut, because I have Asperger's syndrome. But at the same time, if I went around talking in "'Tis I, Sir Eric, do hath thou bestowed upon me Forth, forsooth, I shall, I shall crush a cup of wine. Rest you merry, thy pleasant soul. If I was to speak like that, people would really think I'm a nut. But here, it just feels natural, and the people and the dialogue from the characters make it seem like this is everyday normal language. And to me, I think that is original, it's creative, and it is actually handled very, very effectively. And I gotta thank John Logan for that. A real added treat is that some of the characters actually speak in more modernized language, so not all Shakespearean literature geniuses will get lost in translation. The actors also contribute to the worthy cause by generating emotions that are effective, and their language tones are clear enough so that we can actually care about the characters, while the performers understand that we are not living in the 16th century and our language has altered a bit over the years, for better or for worse. Come to think of it, maybe our languages have changed even as early as maybe 10, 15 years ago. Who knows? A lot has changed. Change happens every day. Routine is not optional. The ensemble cast is definitely quite remarkable, so Fiennes is just genuinely jacked up as the titular character. I mean, he is just a beast in this movie. I mean, this is truly his pet project. His handprints are written all over it, bar none. I mean, he stars in it, he directs it, he's a producer, so his handprints is practically omnipresent here. And his rage and intensity sends chills as he plays a man who doesn't act but demands our respect, even if he doesn't fully respect us. If you put this guy down in any way, vengeance will be just a motion away. And it also may come to the point whether you deserve it or whether you don't deserve it. He will stomp at you at anything. He might be probably capable of slashing your throat even if you blink funny at him. Or if he doesn't like the way you look or the way you act, fuck you, he'll slash you. That's just the kind of character Coriolanus is. And he shows no apologies or remorse for his actions either. Fiennes is just powerfully scary. But like I said, the real effective star here is Vanessa Redgrave. Vanessa Redgrave, she is just as equally ambitious as the mother who is there at all times for her son. I mean, who can ever forget the time when he was just about ready to take down the army that kicked him out? He's joining forces with the enemy. He's going to take down the people who betrayed him. But his mother, she's got the instincts of a general. Yes, I know, even though Fiennes' character is a big, bad, scary guy, underneath all that fear and all that rage and all that vengeance, he's actually a mama's boy. And Vanessa Redgrave, even though she's old and she's been around this block for many decades, she could still dish it. She still got it. And by God, she was effective in her performance. I gotta hand it out to her. She should have been Oscar worthy for Best Supporting Actress. I don't know why she was robbed, but she was just in an extended scene, We see Volumina trying to get some sense into Coriolanus, but her efforts end up becoming ostracized. But she was effective. Eventually, he does try to go back and to try to make peace with the people who betrayed him. But, as always, this is a Shakespearean tragedy, and not everything comes up gravy. And, oh yes, his fate does meet in the end due to the stupid decisions he makes. Sometimes the decisions you make are not always the best judgments, and in the end, Coriolanus does get his comeuppance, unfortunately. Hey, were you expecting a la-di-da happy ending? No. And not all stories have to end in a happy ending. Romeo and Juliet didn't end on a happy ending. Gerard Butler as Tullus Aufidius is just a perfect foil of an adversary to Coriolanus. Their clashes are definitely fierce, with neither of them backing down. Gerard Butler, which goes to show you just how powerful of a performer he is. I mean, it's like he was almost reliving his King Leonidas performance in 300. Here, he's definitely still, just as much of a beast in Coriolanus, just as he was in 300 as Leonidas. I kind of like him when he's playing these kind of roles. Let's see. Rounding out the cast, Jessica Chastain and Brian Cox show some great support. Jessica Chastain was his wife, was Fiennes' wife. What was her name again? I forgot. Virgilia. Of course, she's trying to beg him to come back, not to do this for the people, but at least to come back, at least for the love of his wife and for the love of his son. I just kind of wish there was a little more for her to do, but she's still very effective. Brian Cox as perhaps maybe the only person who could, other than his mother, who could talk sense into him. And then when he feels that his position as his advocate becomes pointless, he also meets with tragedy, feeling that his position is not worth it anymore. He decides to slit his wrists and commit suicide. It seems like a lot of Shakespearean plays often have characters committing suicide. Even some of the more lighter stuff. The tragedies are always, very effective, and nothing ends on a positive note. Most Shakespearean plays are usually often very cynical. It's unfortunate, but I guess that's just the way life goes sometimes. It must have took a lot of work to adapt a Shakespearean story told in modern times. But Fiennes and Logan managed to accomplish that by finding the theme while modernizing the scenarios to our viewing pleasures. The action scenes are plugged in fantastically to keep us over the edge and supports the plot flawlessly. In our lifetimes, we've had very powerful figures, and they all shared one thing that we all strive for: to earn respect. People may not have always made choices to seek our approval without concern of who will face the consequences. We've been victims under leaders who have been barbarians, psychopaths, and cynics. The film explores all those surfaces, which makes it very symbolic and accurate. Well executed cinematography by Barry Ackroyd, perfectly placed editing by Nicholas Gaster, and very well performed. Coriolanus went beyond my expectations to being a very entertaining film. The intense atmosphere will definitely likely suck you in. It might help that you understand Shakespeare to get a better grasp of the story, and if you don't understand the Old English of Shakespeare, well, fear not. The bard's work is still effective, while also has the liberal license to offer new approaches to the classic play. This is clearly a great adaptation to a Shakespearean classic. If I was to give this a scale out of 10, I would definitely give Coriolanus a 9. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember, be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments, and I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Rodrider saying keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.